The Strait of Malacca is one of the world's key trade routes, and it's especially important for Iran, since this is the main corridor the country uses to ship its oil to China. But right now, Iran is under 180 different sanctions related to the energy sector. They seriously limit its capabilities and add a huge amount of risk when it comes to shipping oil from point A in Iran to point B in China by sea. Besides that, the Strait of Malacca route is becoming less and less viable for Iran to send out its oil tankers. The situation's quite complicated, but Iran does have an option to move its black gold over land, straight to China, across the territories of several countries, and through the vast western Chinese deserts. How exactly? Let's find out. So despite being weighed down by 180 energy sanctions, Iran keeps sending oil to China. How? Well, tough times create tough people. And in this case, tons of restrictions have forced Iran to get really crafty. Here, for example, a ship full of oil from Iran is sailing somewhere off the coast of Malaysia. Suddenly it disappears, and then it's sailing back without the oil. That's not magic, it's a well-known trick, where the ship just switches off its Automatic Identification System, or AIS, letting it drop off the radar. The tanker with oil from Iran might not have even stopped at Chinese ports to unload. Chances are the oil was transferred straight onto another ship out in the ocean, one that's not under sanctions and draws less attention. That's a common trick too, letting Iranian oil reach China despite the sanctions. And of course, you need paperwork for all that. Somewhere along the transfer, Iranian oil turns into Omani or Barbadian oil. Sometimes it's just fuel oil with no origin listed. Even if you track the ship's route, everything looks clean on paper, which helps stay under the radar. And there can be teapots in this scheme too, not the kitchen ones obviously. This is about small Chinese oil refineries known as teapot refiners. They're less tightly controlled and ready to buy Iranian oil at heavy discounts, even with the risk of secondary sanctions. Making all this happen isn't exactly simple, and it wouldn't be so bad if not simple were the worst of it. According to different estimates, Iran loses up to 20% of the income from every oil shipment just to get it to the buyer. That's billions of dollars a year that don't go into the country's budget and just vanish somewhere. Basically, trade, shall we say, isn't bringing much joy. And on top of that comes the infamous Strait of Malacca. This strait's a stretch of water that's 559 miles long and between 40 and 155 miles wide, lying between the Malay Peninsula to the northeast and Indonesia's Sumatra to the southwest. It acts as a gateway from the Indian Ocean into the South China Sea, or the other way around. The Strait of Malacca is actually the shortest sea route for trade between parts of Asia and Europe, the Arabian Peninsula, and Africa. That's why around 90,000 ships pass through the strait every year. It's one of the busiest waterways in the world. What does that tell us? It highlights a pretty uncomfortable truth for Iran, which is constantly trying to dodge sanctions. The strait's under tight surveillance, and almost every passing ship is being closely watched. What's more, the local coastal states, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Singapore, have long been working together with the major naval powers, especially the ones behind all the sanctions on Iran-China oil trade. So if a tanker raises suspicion, it can get detained, its cargo seized, and the owner slapped with extra sanctions. Also, because the strait's so busy, cargo ships often sail without protection, making it a perfect target for groups looking to grab someone else's goods using weapons. Back in 2005, the Strait of Malacca was even declared a high-risk zone due to attacks on passing ships. Yes, later that title was stripped off the strait, which you could say was good news for many companies and countries. However, Iran, being under sanctions, found itself in a tricky spot. On the one hand, the risk really did go down, which means the country can worry less about the oil it transports by tanker. On the other hand, Iranian oil tankers are wondering, how did they manage to cut down attacks on passing ships? Naval patrols helped here, along with stronger military cooperation among local states, both with each other and with third countries that had imposed sanctions on Iran. And increased attention to the strait is already a problem for the country. Yes, according to the latest info, oil is still being transferred from one ship to another, but trade is growing, the focus on the strait is increasing, and so is the control. Plus, even if the local authorities don't notice something odd, which is quite typical for Iran-China oil trade, groups like United Against Nuclear Iran step in, trying to track Iranian ships and actively publish data. On top of that, the Strait of Malacca doesn't forgive mistakes. Besides being congested, the strait is narrow and shallow. Tankers carrying Iranian oil are usually old, poorly maintained, or sometimes completely neglected ships that might even sail with their navigation systems turned off. In such cases, there's a high chance of some accident or running aground. When that happens, the tanker becomes visible to the whole world right away. The country of origin, the route, and all violations are exposed. In short, the Strait of Malacca is becoming less and less a viable route for Iran to send oil to China. You could say this route is slowly dying out for the country. Is there a way around it? Yeah, like transporting oil overland. On May 31st, 2025, news came out that a train from the East China city of Xi'an arrived at the Iranian dry port Afrin near Tehran. Solar panels showed up, by the way, just in time because Iran is actively trying to boost its renewable energy production. What's oil got to do with it? Well, first off, Iran will probably be able to send more oil to China, and second, the 6,200-mile land route gets rid of all the problems of sea shipping with those tricky sanctions maneuvers. This isn't some mega project the country built all at once. It's way more complicated because the rail connection between Iran and China includes a bunch of different projects. China already has railways running from its east coast all the way to the western part of the country. Yes, western China isn't the easiest place to build any railway routes. That's where the Taklamakan Desert is, one of the biggest and harshest deserts in China and the world. The nearby areas are a bit less desert-like, but building there's still a challenge. Even so, the Chinese railway goes right up to the western border to the main player on the whole route connecting China with Iran, Kazakhstan. The huge territory of this country stretches out in a key spot, which is the most convenient for China to send its goods somewhere to the southwest. Actually, China figured out long ago Kazakhstan is a promising trade partner. Railway links between China and Kazakhstan appeared back in the 90s. That's where they launched the connection through the Dostik-Alishanku border crossing, where the Chinese line from Lanzhou reached right up to the border. Later, in 2012, a second crossing was added, Altenkal-Korgos, and that really eased the traffic. It became easier and faster to ship goods west. What about Iran? It was running its logistics lines through Turkmenistan at the same time. Tehran had railway ties with Turkmenistan for a long time, and that country connected with Kazakhstan. In theory, this made it possible to ship goods from Iran to China back then using the Iran-Turkmenistan-Kazakhstan-China link. That's the best way to transport various goods and oil. But the truth is, that route wasn't convenient. Actually, it was really inconvenient and didn't really qualify as an efficient trade route. It was necessary to transfer cargo from one track to another, and as you can imagine, that takes some time, especially when we're talking about large volumes. The time loss can get pretty serious. Of course, the route still allowed transporting goods without any sanctions or surveillance from third countries, and without having to use various detours. However, low efficiency and complexity made it impossible to turn it into a worthy alternative to the Malacca Strait. Everything changed on December 3rd, 2014. On that day, they officially opened the direct railway line China, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Iran. It stretches from the eastern part of China to Kazakhstan, then goes to Turkmenistan, and after that reaches the Iranian city of Gorgan. And that's not all, because then Uzbekistan fully connected to the rail network, allowing goods to move between Iran and China. They built infrastructure to get rid of the transfer points that used to slow the route down. It was along this very route in 2025 that the solar panels we talked about before arrived. So Iran now has two ways to ship its oil to China. This is a major milestone for both countries and for all the others involved. But let's talk specifically about what Iran gets from these railway lines. First and foremost for Iran, it's the chance to ship oil to China, no matter the restrictions. Along the way, there isn't a single country willing to follow the sanctions, so Tehran can forget all the tricks it has to pull off when shipping oil to China by sea. And yeah, the railways not only ease the headaches for Iranians, but also put more money in their pockets, because fewer and fewer tankers need to sail through risky seas that cause losses. Plus, Iran's starting to act like a regional hub, all thanks to faster delivery and lower logistics risks. Through the railway corridor, the country gets access to two directions at once, China and Central Asia, and that means both income and political clout. Also, the route's a way faster way to ship oil to China by quite a bit. For example, a train that came from China in 2025 took 2 weeks for the whole 6,200-mile trip. At first glance, it seems like it takes a long time. But as they say, Iranian ships have to spend 30 to 40 days on the sea route through the Strait of Malacca. And that's not even counting the possibility that the tanker could get delayed or break down somewhere in a shallow strait. Well, we've already talked about that. Overall, the delivery speed to China gets a big boost. All these advantages of rail transport are true for China as well. Lower cost compared to sea routes, no risk that Iranian oil won't reach Chinese shores, leaving Chinese companies without expected income. However, for China, there's one more big bonus. The thing is, for China, each of these routes is an essential part of the famous Belt and Road Initiative. This is a huge initiative, and its main goal is to create a vast network of land and sea routes connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa. It's like bringing back the ancient Silk Road, but in a modern way, as they say in Chinese presentations. So the railway network that reaches Iran is part of the route that then goes on to Ankara, the capital of Turkey, after which it heads into Europe. That means through Iran, China can send its goods straight to European countries without all those long sea routes. And also, the railways running through Iran are a backup plan in case something happens in the Strait of Malacca. Beijing still gets a good chunk of its oil and resources from West Asia and Africa through there, but the days of calm in the South China Sea and the Red Sea are long gone. That's why China's building overland reserve routes so its energy security doesn't depend on what's going on at sea. It's interesting that knowing all this, trade between China and Iran isn't just alive, but growing. In 2023, it topped $14.6 billion. This shows that the importance of the rail corridor isn't theoretical, but completely real. For Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan, the railways are a gold mine too. Chinese and Iranian cargo now regularly pass through their territories, which means tariffs, jobs, logistics hubs, and overall a boost to all related business. But let's single out Kazakhstan here. Thanks to the railway route to Iran, Kazakhstan, as it should, is strengthening its image as a bridge between Asia and Europe. You can see it in the numbers too. Container shipments from China to Iran through its territory grew 2.6 times in the first months of 2025. On top of that, Kazakhstan is active not only as a transit country, but also as a trading partner of Iran and China. For example, there's a big demand for Kazakh barley in Iran. Back in 2016, Kazakhstan sent its southern neighbor 800,000 tons of this crop. In 2017, Kazakhstan started growing barley specifically for Iran on more than 2,470 acres, and they also promised to boost that number up to 24,700 acres. Tehran's also interested in supplies of Kazakh railway machinery and metallurgical products. In short, trade between the countries is actively growing, and even leading to changes within them. For China, Kazakhstan is the main trading partner in Central Asia. In 2024, their bilateral trade hit $43.8 billion. By the way, this includes not only direct shipments, but also transit flows, which go, among other places, to Iran. You could say this is a detour that might soon become the best way to transport Iranian cargo, but what if we told you there's a detour for the detour? It's TITR, or the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route. Yeah, it's another route under the Belt and Road Initiative that China and its neighbors are building from Asia to Europe. It works by the rule where you can't go by land, you go by sea. It all starts in eastern China, where the cargo travels by train first across the whole territory of China, then through Kazakhstan, all the way to the ports of Aktau or Kurik on the Caspian Sea. From there, the containers are loaded onto ferries that cross the Caspian Sea. On the other side, they're met in Alayat, Azerbaijan, and again they get loaded onto the railway. Through Azerbaijan and Georgia, the goods reach Black Sea ports like Poti or Batumi. From there, they go to Turkey, then on to Europe, or sometimes straight to Europe across the Black Sea. Why is this route important? Because it's an alternative. The northern route through Russia is facing pressure. The southern sea route, as we've already seen today, is long and unstable. And TITR offers a third option, faster, more flexible, plus it goes through countries that aren't at the center of global sanctions yet. For China, it's a chance to move cargo to Europe without relying on the usual routes. What does Iran have to do with it if not a single city on this route is even on the map? The thing is, this doesn't mean the country isn't benefiting from TITR. So back in 2018, it was announced that a test train with cargo from China arrived in Kazakhstan, and then via the Caspian Sea, they reached the Iranian port city of Anzali. As a result, Iranian media immediately reported that the port at the arrival point officially became part of the China-Kazakhstan-Iran multimodal corridor. That means China and Iran are linked without the two countries, Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. Only Kazakhstan remains. What are the benefits of this route for Iran? The shipments moving between Iran and China now have even less chance of running into issues that would lead to extra expenses. It's worth noting that the route is actively developing largely thanks to Kazakhstan, which is deepening the shipping channels and port areas in the Caspian Sea. For example, in the port of Aktau, one of the main transit points on the TITR, Kazakhstan kicked off large-scale dredging work to increase the sea depth by 5 to 6 feet. This way, the country aims to make its infrastructure ready to handle bigger ships while also improving their navigation. This $84.5 million project is expected to be completed by the fourth quarter of 2025. Besides that, similar dredging work has already been successfully done at another Kazakh port, Kursk, where they deepened it to 23 to 26 feet. Kazakhstan's work on the TITR route doesn't stop with dredging operations. By mid-2025, the country plans to finish building a major container hub at the port of Aktau, which will boost capacity to 240,000 TEU a year. On top of that, there are plans to upgrade existing berths, and efforts are underway to renew and expand the fleet of handling equipment, including buying new loaders and cranes. All this is meant to speed up cargo processing in the port. Yeah, this route just isn't cut out for moving Iranian oil to China, because chances are it won't be all that efficient even compared to the Strait of Malacca. After all, you'd first have to send the black gold across the Caspian Sea, then reload it onto a railway, and only then ship it off to China. And that's not even mentioning the fact that transporting oil needs way more than just the kind of infrastructure used for regular cargo. However, Kazakhstan does have some projects to restore oil loading terminals, so chances are, after a while, this route really could become another option for getting black gold to China.